So first up, welcome everybody to the Independent Gym Summer Conference. My name's McCartney. I'm Customer Experience Director for Les Mills. And I'm really pleased to be launching this brand new session that we've created and tailored specifically for this market around group training for profit. So group training, group exercise, classes, aerobics, whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to get hung up on the semantics of the wording, but it's really how you utilize group training, group exercise, those class timetables in your facility to really build out a profitable organization. In the video that I did for this, as just a bit of a preview, there were 3 key outtakes from today's session. The first one is going to be showcasing what the best facilities in the world are currently doing with group training and group exercise and how they leverage group training to generate profit. We're going to be looking at some goal-setting exercises for you. So hopefully, you've got in front of you your class timetables. If not, you've committed it to memory or even pull it up on your phone. That's absolutely fine because we're going to be looking at some of those classes that you have and how you can set some real key tangible targets to achieve the goals that we'll set out at the beginning. And the last thing is how you utilize your instructors as probably your best marketing resource, your best marketing asset, how they can help you manage your group exercise timetable. So I'll kick it off really with what our goal is. Les Mills has been around since 1968. We've been a global organization and we're still an independent gym operator. This is why I love doing this conference, is because we still run and operate 12 gyms out of New Zealand that run completely independent from some of the other big national chains. But the goal that was set in 1968 is the purpose of the gym industry is make people fall in love with fitness. That still holds true in our values. It still holds true in everything that we do. So how do we get people to fall in love with fitness? Big events, big social activity, big engagement, but really it's about connection. It's about how we can get your members to connect with each other and work out in a like-minded way. So the first question we'll ask is, what are some of the challenges that gyms are facing around the world today? Now this goes above and beyond just the independent gym sector, but I will be tailoring in and lasering in on this area. The first one is that there has been an explosive digital disruption. Amazon, Apple, Google, all have stepped into the digital space and offering different digital solutions. But I put an extra one up on here. YouTube. One of the biggest innovations that's out there with regards to digital exercise, but also one of the most dangerous. Let's be honest about it. Some of the stuff that appears on YouTube, if you saw that in your gym and on your gym floor, you would be questioning where the programming came from. How many of you see your members on the gym floor with either a phone, a tablet, or some digital device following a workout? Show of hands? Yeah, it's a few people. Every gym that I go to, I'm really lucky. I get to travel around quite a lot. I was training in a gym this morning, and I travel in different gyms around the world. But in any gym that I go to now, there is some form of digital device where people are working out. So capitalizing on that trend is key and is important. But when we start to look at that digital disruption, how do we use that as an opportunity rather than as a threat? The second biggest challenge is that the competition has dramatically increased. Gone are the days, and I'm going to show my age here, and those of you that know me know I've been within the UK industry for 30 years now. And when I first started out, the competition was really simple. I worked in a private health club, and the competition was the leisure centre down the road. Now you've got competition coming at you from different angles, and we've segmented it down into 4 key sections. Our traditional fitness facilities are still key, but they're being squeezed. 3 examples on the screen there, Fitness First, Virgin Active, and Bannatyne, are being squeezed by 2 ends of the market. The high-end premium is becoming more and more premium. If any of you have been to Third Space in London, £250 a month for membership, which gives you access to the 11 sites now, but it is super uber premium. And low cost, it actually isn't low cost anymore. We're calling it high value low cost because Pure Gym and Gym Group are now squeezing up into the mid-market by offering more opportunities and solutions. And then you've got the boutiques as well. F45, Barry's. Those boutiques are popping up in local locations, particularly as competition for the independent gym sector. So to really differentiate now, you need to be substantially different, and you need to have a service offering or a product offering that is going to enable you to compete with this competition. The last challenge is that there is a huge change in demographics. For those of you who were here at the winter conference, I talked about winning the next generation of fitness enthusiasts. I talked about winning Gen Z, because when we look at that demographic, it's dramatically changed. 80% of health club members around the world now are either Gen Z or millennials. We know that. We've done the research. We've worked with the 21,000 clubs around the world, and we've looked at the different demographics. 80% of those health club members are Gen Z and millennials. So that demographic shift means that what worked 10 years ago needs to change, because there is a different want, a different demand, a different need from that younger demographic. No longer can you cater towards the boomers and the Gen Xers as your key target offering. You've got to change up that demographic profile. So how do you win the next generation of fitness enthusiasts? It really is around creating the right environment. It is around creating the right atmosphere. It's around having the right programming and the right instructors to engage these new participants coming through. We put a fourth challenge in here because one challenge remains constant, and it's been constant throughout the, as I said, 30 years that I've been working in the industry. But the key challenge is not just acquiring members, it's retaining them. The next generation of fitness enthusiasts are the most promiscuous demographic that's out there, and I don't mean that in a derogatory term. I mean that they have no brand loyalty. They'll be a member of your club, they'll train somewhere else, they'll go to a CrossFit box, they'll work out at home. They have no brand loyalty. But what we found is that if you can engage this community with some form of activity, some form of workout, some exciting trend that they are engaged with, they're more likely to come back. We're not going to talk about it in this presentation, but in part of this, and I think I explained it in the video, this session is taken from our group fitness management training, which is 8 keys to enable you to run group training correctly within your facility. And we've taken this section from that. Part of that, though, we look at not just your average member age, but your average joiner age. So if I were to ask you now, we won't do this because we will get into some workshop sections in a second. If I were to ask you, what do you think the average age of your member is? You might say, it's anywhere between 35 and 55. Some of you may say it's even older, and that's absolutely fine. But then when you drill down to your average joiner, average age of the joiner globally right now is anywhere between 27 and 36. So what are you doing in terms of attracting and retaining those new members coming in to your facility? The good news is that the fitness continues to grow. Any of you that are attending David Minton's session later on this afternoon, when he looked at the state of the industry, between 15 and 16% of the total UK population are now members of a fitness facility, which is great because that's crept up. And I remember when it was at 12, 13%, so it's continuing to grow. The bad news is, whilst the percentage is increasing, there is a decrease in share of market. People, as I said, are becoming more and more, and I use the word promiscuous, not in a derogatory way, but they're becoming more and more disloyal to brands, and they're training at different locations. So whilst we question whether or not they're training in facility, it's different facilities they're training in. There is a huge decrease in share in wallet. So some of this is the US based, but on average in the US, an average fitness enthusiast spends around about $111 per month on boutique fitness classes, compared to $52 per month in multi-purpose locations. Good news and bad news there. One, people are willing to pay for high quality workout experiences. The boutiques have proved that. People are willing to pay for more high-quality fitness experiences. The bad news is, as I said, if you continue to do what you've always done, and if you have the mindset of good is good enough, you are not going to attract this new demographic and this new audience. So this isn't saying you have to spend a huge amount of your budget on group training. It just means focusing on the right things and manage it in the right way, which is what we'll talk about today. So, question to the crowd. You just shout this out. Beyond digital disruption, beyond new joiners, beyond the market changing, what challenges are you currently facing out there in your town, in your location right now? Just shout it out. Anybody? Should we get a mic roving? I should do that really, shouldn't I? There's one there, yeah. Anybody? Any challenges? Anything else? No one wants to you're not that shy, surely. Budget gyms, yeah, okay. So the budget operators, why are they a challenge for you? Because they're cheap. Absolutely. People are buying on price. But as I said right at the beginning, they're becoming more high value rather than low cost. Every budget operator out there is saying, whilst we might get them in from a price point, how do we keep them for longer? And unfortunately, if it's always based on price and you're cutting out some of the services, people will start to look for more valuable experiences. Cool. Anything else? Cost of living, the macroeconomic factors, absolutely. We can't ignore that. We absolutely can't ignore that. But it's like anything, isn't it? If you think back, and I'm not going to dwell on this because it gives me PTSD thinking about it, but we think about pandemic and that time during lockdown. People were being more thoughtful on how they spend their disposable income. But wellness is an absolute growth trend that's out there. It's not just about fitness now. Wellness is a key word. One of the other presentations that I do looks at employee engagement. And in particular with Gen Z and millennials, 90% of millennials state that wellness is key when they work for any organization. If there's not a wellness policy in place, they won't think about working for that organization. So it's about wellness now rather than fitness. And it comes back to cost of living. People will consider what they spend their money on if it increases health, well-being as an overall concept. So if you're just promoting to the 20%ers and it's the aesthetic goals and the high-intensity beast things, people are going to look at that and go, that's not for me, it's too hard. But if you promote wellness and improve quality of life, that's a different way of promoting it. Thank you. So the question is, how do we compete in this changing landscape? Because there are challenges that are out there. And as I said right at the beginning, we still run fitness facilities, 12 gyms in New Zealand, which we've run on a consistent basis since 1968. But we're thriving in that space. How? Because we're providing motivational, experiential spaces. Whether you think let me change that wording. If you think you're in the fitness business to promote fitness, you're never going to succeed. Our main goal is to get people motivated to move more often. More people, more active, more often. To quote UK Active and Hugh sitting in the room. But it's about how do we motivate people? How do we motivate people to get moving? A number of different ways you can motivate people. Experiential spaces, you can have competitions, you can have goals, results, working with great brands, creating FOMO through social media, music and video, having an at-home and an in-club experience, great instructors, social interaction education, and also enjoyable experiences. So this is where it starts to get interesting, because this is where we'll start to look at how we can measure that motivation. When it comes down to group training for profit, group exercise, group fitness for profit, the first thing is, how are you measuring your attendance? If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And it's one of the biggest mistakes that we find working with clubs around the world is you're not tracking your attendance levels on a consistent basis. And we'll talk about how we do that in a moment. But really there's two key things. Number one, the most important metric in our industry is attendance. How many times a week are your members attending your facility? We'll come on to that session in a moment. And then it's always about frequency. We know that the more that they come, the longer that they stay. If you can get your members to attend twice per week, they are more likely to stay for longer. The research that we did, working with the retention people actually, and then corroborated through URSA, is if your members are attending 1.5 times per week or less, they will stay with you less than a year. Because we've all seen it. Remember, any of you that have worked on the onboarding process, new member comes in, yeah, I'm going to train 5 days a week, and you're kind of laughing in your head going, this is not going to happen. We'll see you once a week if you're lucky. But unless you can get them engaged in regular activity for 2 visits per week or more, they're less likely to stay. If you can get them at 2 visits per week, 2.5 years, 2.2 visits to 6.9, but 2.4 being 10 years plus. Now that's an average. These stats really are the ones that resonate with me. On average, across the world, it's about 1.9 visits per week, on average. Now some of you will sit there and go, but some of my members attend 7 days a week. That's a 20%. What about the people that join and never come? What about the people that come in sporadically and maybe you see little and often? On average, it's about 1.9 visits per week, but 66% of most club members around the world use their club fewer than 1.9 times per week. And 43% use it less than once per week. That's maybe once a month. That's social status. If I'm a member of a gym and they never actually come along. So how do we start to change these numbers? How can we move the needle? These are the 3 things that I want to hone in on and look at how we can workshop this to help you with some goals to improve your numbers. For those members that attend group training, they stay on average 2 years or longer. For those that attend classes, they will stay longer. Why? for positive habits, for social connection, for community, for fun, for enjoyment. There's a number of different reasons why group training will keep people engaged within your product. So the key is, how do you get them involved in some form of regular activity? 94% of group training participants will recommend a friend to a facility. So what's your referral process? Do any of you ever get this? I know many of you are operators and it's slightly different, but when you go to a friend's or a party or a dinner party, what do? I work in fitness, and I go, oh yeah, one of those, are you? You're like, you should come along, you should come, and then people are just like, no. But your biggest advocates, your biggest marketing resources out there are your loyal fans. 94% will refer more. And there's also a higher value, and we've dropped this stat in because there is a higher perceived value of the clubs that run Les Mills programming than other facilities. Why? Consistency, scalability, the instructor quality, the virtual solution. There's a number of different reasons there. And I'm not here to talk about our programming and our brands today, but that is a key statistic that we need to draw upon. So going back right at the beginning, the purpose of the gym industry is to make people fall in love with fitness. That was Les's goal back in 1968 and one that holds true today. So how do you make people fall in love with fitness? But the question I want to pose to you, which I want to run through in the last part of this workshop, because we're going to start getting into some detail now. What would be the impact of increasing your average visits to your facility by 1 per week? So think back to those numbers. Think back to less than 1 year, 2 to 5 years, and 5 years plus. If you could get the average visits to your facility to increase by 1, what impact would that have on the bottom line? Now, usually at this point, I pull a flip chart out and we go, right, what's your average yield? Say, for example, your £50 a month average yield. And if you could get your members to attend 1 visit more per week, what impact would that have over a 2 to 5 year period? In most scenarios, it's 6 figures impact on the bottom line. 6 figures plus, just by increasing the average visits per week by 1. Now you're probably thinking, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds really, really achievable. How do I do that? What are the key things that I need to put in place to make that work? Well, as luck would have it, that's the purpose of this next section. We're going to discuss 4 key things. How are you creating short and long-term goals around group training? For any of you that have ever managed personal training or even sales in your facility, think about your group training product as you would a salesperson. Think of the funnel in sales. That's what I do most days, all day, every day. But how many calls have you made? How many leads are in your system? How many calls have you made? How many appointments have you booked? What's your conversion rate? And how many sales do you achieve? And it comes back to the same thing when we're thinking about group training attendance. What are your short and long-term goals for each individual class that will enable you to build towards that 1 extra visit per week? We recommend using the latest technology to count classes. We won't go into that in too much detail today, but there is a section in our program that talks about that and some recommendations on how you would do it. But just to touch upon that now, how many of you use instructors to count attendance in your classes? You might use a booking system, but how many of you use instructors to write it down how many people attend? Anybody? No one in the room uses instructors anymore. You all use booking systems. Great, that's good news. Because in most scenarios, instructors can't count above 8 because that's the phrasing they work towards. And they also count the legs in the room and not the heads in the room. I had 50 people in your class. You got 25 bikes. How does that happen? So writing that down. So we recommend using technology. And if it's booking systems, amazing. Analyze your results to make better decisions. And then the last thing, we're going to talk about stakeholders. Now, many of you in the room are owners, operators. Some of you are managers. Who are the stakeholders you need to engage with to make sure you have a winning group exercise product? So, the first question, what is your current weekly attendance? Does anyone have that? You don't have to share it, by the way. I'm just asking if you have it in front of you. If you don't have it, cage out the back. You're coming up, don't worry. We've got you on the screen in a minute. Don't worry about that. But the first thing I would say is if you don't know this number, if you can't manage what you can't measure. So unless you know this number, it's really difficult to set those long-term goals. You're probably thinking, well, that's great, but what are the numbers that I should be measuring? We recommend 2 visits per week per member. So say, for example, you had a 2,000 member facility, we recommend that the gold standard be 2,000 visits per week. That's half of your members attending twice a week, which equals your membership. Does that make sense? So if you've got 2,000 members, but 1,000 of them are attending 2 times a week, that's 2,000 weekly attendances. That's the simple way that we think of measuring. When we're looking at the best facilities in the world, locally it's around about 2,500 attendances, the city's 5,000, 7,500 national, but world class is 10,000 plus. Now I mentioned right at the beginning that there was a little bit of a promo video that I recorded for Amy and Rob to send out. We've looked at some stats from around the world and some of the best performing facilities in the world. So if you don't know what your weekly attendance is at the moment, that's fine, but take this slide away and compare it. These are the top facilities in the world right now with group training. Number one, and we're going to do this, self-promotion, our Les Mills Auckland City Club, 11,000 members, they have 9,000 weekly group exercise attendances per week. That's not 2 visits per week per member. They're only around about 30% of unique users, but they attend more regularly, more often. But I've got to give a shout out. 315, there's 5 gone off there. 315 Health Clubs, 7,000 visits per week to group exercise right now. It's a 7,500 member club, 7,000 visits. So they're achieving that benchmark, that 50% benchmark, members attending 2 times per week. Then as we come down, we've got a few more in the US, a couple in New Zealand, and I've also thrown in some of our European counterparts as well. This club here, Fit Camp Westerwald, I've had the opportunity of working, I worked in Germany for just over a year, and I went to Fit Camp Westerwald, and they have around about 1,500 members, very, very rural location, middle of nowhere, literally you drive through fields to get to this club. But they've created this remarkable group training environment where people are attending consistently. They've built out great studios. They're not bells and whistles, lighting, sound, but they're great locations in terms of motivation. They've got a great group training studio as a main location, but they're achieving just under their membership stats every week, and they are very rural. They are literally middle of nowhere. So here's just some brief examples of what the best clubs in the world are doing. And one of the key things that they do within each of these clubs is that weekly attendance metric is key for them. They're thinking, how do we improve that weekly attendance and monitoring it, managing it on a consistent basis. So think about Group X as your percentage of total attendance. 25% is roughly the UK average right now. So for a 4,000 member facility, they're roughly around about 1,000 visits per week to group exercise. But as I said, if you want to be best in class, if you want to generate profit, if you want to step out of your comfort zone and start looking at group training as a revenue opportunity rather than the cost center, 50% should be your overall target. Because people would attend more often. When they attend more often, they're likely to stay for longer. They'll keep the membership yield coming through. Your bottom line and your DD run will continue to show growth. What I would have loved to have done is actually pull apart some of the UK statistics, but we couldn't get to that space. So what I've done here is, this is a very, very detailed overview of our Les Mills Auckland City Club, that top performing club there at 9,000 visits per week. These are all of the different programs that they run. I've done this for 2 things. One, to showcase how they measure this. This sits in their management office. It's up on a screen. The GM sees it. The operational managers see this. They have this up and they know what the attendance for each class is. So across each of the programs, and yes, they're all Les Mills programs because they're our clubs, but as you run down this, you can see that some of the top attended classes are within what we call our signature range. Some of the cycle classes are definitely up there, but it really is a drive in attendance. The second reason is I wanted to showcase the impact that virtual is having on their overall attendance. They have a 69% of total visits attending group training. So when we said 50% was world class, 70% of total check-ins are attending group training. 15% of which are virtual. Now these are big studios. If any of you have ever seen any of our original masterclass videos, DVDs, I'm showing my age, some of the videos we had on our masterclasses, the main studio at Auckland City is 300 people capacity. Big stage, bigger than this with lighting, and it used to be used for filming. What they've done though is they've found spaces around the club to run virtual programming as well, to supplement those classes. What are some of the benefits of virtual? If an instructor doesn't show up, you can run a class consistently. You can run more classes during off-peak times. There's definitely a value-added benefit to running more virtual classes. So if 15% of your total check-ins were attending virtual classes, think of the impact that will have on that one extra visit per week that you're aiming towards. It's just about getting people moving. There's lots of barriers towards virtual classes. It's not the same as a live class, I agree. It's not the same connection that you get with an instructor on stage. But it's better than nothing. When we've looked at that digital disruption, I won't talk about it today, but when you're thinking about 5 visits per week for your enthusiasts, 2 of which are in a digital space, whether that be a virtual class in club or at home or on a gym floor with a tablet or device. So think about supplementing your classes with some form of virtual solution. I put this slide in not to talk about our programs, but just to showcase some of the variants that we've got across our programming. So from our signature programming that many of you will be aware of, there's now our new in-house boutique collection, and also we've got a limited edition collection with Pilates launching later on this year. We've now launched a limited edition version of Les Mills Pilates. Why am I showing you this? Because if you take each of these components from strength, cardio, HIIT, mind-body, hybrid, and some form of youth programming, that is the split that we recommend when it comes across from programming. I'll get off that slide pretty quick. So now's the time in the workshop where I want you to set your goals. You don't have to spend too long on this because we don't actually have as much time. But I want you to think about, if you took this slide here, and happy to send this on to anybody if you want to use this as a post-workshop tool. Think about your current membership size. Think about your current frequency of visits and the percentage of visits to group exercise. Then, really simply, I want you to set some goals. What could you achieve in 6 months, in 12 months, 18 months, or 24 months? Set some really, we call them BHAGs. If anyone's read Jim Collins' Good to Great, there's a concept known as a BHAG, which stands for Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal. And we've always used that within everything that we do within Les Mills, which is shown of our global growth. But in 24 months, what's your big, hairy, audacious goal? What do you want to get to? If you're currently at 500 members, what would it take to get to 2,000 members in 24 months? What would it take to get those 500 members to attending 1 extra visit per week? And what impact would that then have on your membership size, on your frequency of visits, and your visits to group exercise? And what we mean by that is, if you could increase your visits by 1 visit per week, what impact would that have? And then, happy to do this with you, and come and see us at the stand if you want to run through this today. We can run some numbers on the impact that will have on your bottom line. So if we plug in these 3 figures, if your membership size increases from 500 to 2,000, what impact would that have on your revenue? Pretty easy to do. But then when we start thinking about frequency, and if we can get to that 2.5 tipping point, what impact would that have on your lifetime value of your membership? Really, really simple. So usually at this point, we then say, right, let's talk about what's stopping you, because all of you could sit there and go, well, I can't do that because I don't have enough space, or I don't have the budget, or I don't have enough instructors. Forget about that. They're challenges that we can overcome. Besides something happening as catastrophic as a global pandemic, all of the tools that you have are within your hands right now to increase attendance and frequency of visits. So don't think about them as barriers. Think about them as challenges to overcome. And how we would recommend you do that is, what's your biggest strength? What is your USP, your unique selling proposition of your facility right now? And the one thing that I love working with independent gyms is, when I speak to the most successful independent gyms, the unique selling proposition is community. It's about the community that you build. It's about the connection that you have with some of your team. Many of the operators that are out there, you've had people working in your facilities for years and years and years, and every member knows. It's like Cheers. Everyone knows your name. That's really showing my age. No one can remember Cheers. But yeah, you revealed that one. Where everyone knows your name. You go into the facility and the front desk know your name. The gym instructor knows your name. The class instructor knows your name. Building community. That's really the key strength of any independent operator. So how do you leverage that strength even more? One thing that we do recommend, and I'm skipping through this just because I'm conscious of time. One thing we do recommend is your individual short-term class target. So we'll just do this and bear with me on this. And again, we've used Les Mills classes, but it could be anything. So let's just say you've got a strength class. It's a Sunday at 10 a.m., which in most rural locations is a really busy time because people are in working out, particularly if you've got childcare. That's a busy, busy class time. So we've set some class attendance targets. Last quarter, they were achieving 20 visits per week. But this quarter, we've set it at 35. What are some of the reasons you think we've increased that class number? Group fitness managers in the room, just shout it out. Why would we increase it from 20 to 35? What are some of the reasons? I'll help you on this first one. So we've got a new instructor that's best in town. You've recruited a new instructor, or better still, you've got an existing instructor that's done really, really well in other time slots and have a loyal following. And you're saying, we want you to teach that class at 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning. But in order to do that, we're going to increase your class target. So what we recommend you in the Group Fitness Management module is that you go through each of your classes and say, what was the attendance here? And then set a target specific to that class. Then communicate that with the instructor. So when I said right at the beginning, use your instructors as your best resource to manage group training, set a target for your group training instructor. The expectation is that you get 25 people in this class every single week. Now, as most of you are not using instructors to count the attendances, and you've got a booking system, you can actually get a realistic figure. Because otherwise, what will happen is, I'm getting 25 every week. Are you really? Or is that just because you've got the target? You've got the numbers to back it up. So we're just showcasing this to say, how do you set these targets? So they're on higher wages, you've got a great instructor, the best in town, and you really want to push them through. Then on Tuesday at 6 o'clock, you've got a body attack instructor. Last quarter, hit 48. This quarter, we're going to set them a target of 52. It's a big studio. Why are we doing that? The maximum capacity is 60, but we've got a similar type of class achieving 58 attendances in that time slot. So like for like, do the comparison. Look across your timetable. Think horizontally, not vertically on your classes. Analyze it by your time slot and say, which are the like-for-like classes, and assess them on that. Now, some people say, well, you can't compare a Monday night to a Thursday night. There's a word that I use with that starts with a B and ends with a T. You can compare any night of the week with each other. If you create an experience that is highly valued and people want to attend, they will come. So you can compare a Thursday to a Monday. You can compare a Friday to a Monday. Probably not a Saturday night or a Sunday night to a Monday, but midweek you absolutely can. Now this last one's an interesting one. 6 a.m. cycle class. Last quarter was 40, but we're dropping the target down to 35. Why? It's a new instructor replacing the top performer. So it's not always about increasing the target based on growth. It's about setting realistic targets based on the people that are attending. So 3 things that we recommend that you do with this, with targeting. Number 1, base your target on previous quarter performance. Number 2, look across the time slot and do a compare and contrast. And number 3, get the buy-in from your instructors on that class target. Sit down individually with each instructor and say, your target for the next 3 months is to achieve this number. It sets clear expectation, it creates buy-in, and it will increase attendance in the short term. You'll see a bump in your attendance. So there's a goal straight away, or a top tip straight away, to increase to that extra 1 visit per week. The reality is, though, you might need to add more classes to reach your optimal potential. Now, we talk a lot about class management in our group fitness management program. Remove underperforming classes, replace with more higher performing classes, more higher performing instructors. But the reality is, many of you will have to look at your timetable and say, I'm not going to achieve that BHAG that we set for 24 months with my current offering, so I need to offer more. This is where we'd recommend having some form of omni-channel approach. The blend between live and digital, some form of virtual programming to supplement. You could run a 24/7 group exercise timetable in your facility with some virtual provision. Now, don't measure virtual classes in the same way you measure live classes. Too many operators I speak to, virtual doesn't work. We only get 7 people per class. I'll take that. I'll take 7 people in a virtual class over none at all attending on a regular basis. Set the expectations lower, run more classes more often, set it with your virtual. So what you end up doing is you have your peak time slots where you run your live group training, but if you run virtual classes at shoulder time slots or throughout the day, not all day every day, but at certain periods, you will increase your overall attendance. And the great news on that is you'll get new people coming in and going, I don't want to go to that class with Carl because he's an absolute lunatic and the music's too loud. But I'll go at 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon because I can go in and no one will judge me and I can leave early if I want. And then you start to create these positive exercise habits. The best personal trainers that I've worked with around the world will program virtual classes as part of an onboarding strategy. Just go and try it. Just do 20 minutes. If you don't like it, you can leave. No one's going to judge you. But go and give it a go. In fact, I'll come in with you and I'll do it with you. And what you build up is this community, and then people get more confidence. When they get more confidence, they go to the live classes, and you see that attendance start to spike. We're recommending using the latest class technology. In our GFM, we talk about heat mapping cameras in studios. We talk about how you can use booking systems to the next level so that it starts to calculate your weekly attendances. I won't cover that one. Analysis of your class timetable is absolutely key as well. I'm conscious I've only got a few more minutes. So in terms of analysis, we break it down into, once you've set your individual class targets, think about 3 key measures. Who's your best performing instructor? What's your best performing class type? What's your best performing class time slot? And measure and manage that accordingly and manipulate those numbers to start to move towards that BHAG. So this then starts to build out that action plan towards generating profit within your facility. There's a number of different analysis and tracking softwares out there. We work with a couple where it can pull those attendance results and goals. Many of your member management systems will have this option as well, where you can start to look at the analysis of your goals. But your software should show your goals for average attendance. It should track, ideally, any at-home participation. That's the panacea, and we're not quite there yet. Track your progress against them, and then in some options it would be some form of payroll system or occupancy as well. And the last thing that I want to talk about is how you consult the stakeholders, and I've touched upon this briefly. So 4 questions on the board there. Who is making the decisions around your group training? Now, for many of you as owner-operators, you're making that decision. But one of your biggest stakeholders, and this could get into a lengthy discussion that maybe we won't get into today. The biggest stakeholders when it comes to any form of change around group exercise are your existing members. How many of you in the room have been resistant around making a timetable change because you fear the backlash of your existing members? Be honest. And if any of you say no, you're lying, because I've run clubs and no one does it, because you go, I know if I change that class time by 5 minutes, 20 people are going to be banging on my door saying, why am I changing it? So first thing, consult your stakeholders, members, instructors, group fitness managers, and then as owner-operators in the room, think about other key stakeholders you'll need to engage. Who's doing the work around managing your group training timetable? One of the biggest mistakes is you set it up and it runs on its own. No, engage your instructors. If you're a GFM, group fitness manager, make sure you're connecting with the people that run the classes. So your instructors are absolutely key. Who might change the impact? We talk a lot about this on the vocal minority. Those members that you know, if you make any change on your timetable. I think I've got 3 minutes. There you go. We know that vocal minority will influence that decision. So how do you engage with those early? In fact, how do you ask those members, I'm thinking of making this change. What do you think? Get their buy-in early on that change. And lastly, any other decision makers you need to influence. So I've already been given the 3-minute warning. Next steps. We talked a lot around your existing attendances and your class numbers, and some of you have them, some of you don't. But what I would encourage you to do, based on all the things I've discussed today, going right back to the beginning of if you could increase your average attendance by 1 visit per week, what would it take? As you walk away from today, think about creating those long and short-term goals for your individual classes. If you do nothing else, that's going to instantly change the way that you manage your group training. Use software, use analysis software to really push that forwards. And I was going to finish off with this last question, to write down 3 things that you individually need to work on But as we don't have time for that, I do want to pause just in case there are any questions. The last thing that I would say is if today has just sparked some interest, has just sparked some thinking around how to do things differently. If you want to take this further, the group fitness management program that we run at Les Mills is part of the partnership for any Les Mills customer. It's available online to run through. We've got an amazing digital product that you can run through online, and you can put any of your team members through. If you're not an existing Les Mills partner and you want to put your team through that, come and see us over there, and I'll create access for your team to run through that program. It talks through 8 key plays: how you manage the numbers, how you recruit instructors, motivate and train instructors, how you manage your timetable, how you create events and marketing, how you build a world-class studio, and how you build a business plan. If anyone wants to run through that, we're happy to set you up with that. You don't have to be a Les Mills partner to do it. We'll put you through that program. But I will pause there and just say, any questions from anybody? I wasn't expecting I only had 3 minutes. I thought I had 10. Any questions from anyone in the room? If you don't have questions now, you can come and grab us on the we're literally right opposite. We're next to Explore. Explore are giving away strawberries and cream. So go and see them, and then come and see us afterwards. But if you do have any questions or queries, come and see myself, Darren or Akin on that stand, and happy to talk through any of those key questions. Thank you very much for your time, everybody. Cheers.